The rain came
Please, I
down
didn't mean
hard
for
on
this.
Portland that November.
Where is it? Tell me
The
now!
kind of
Answer
cold
him.
that
Don't make
seeps
this
into your
worse.
bones and reminds you why people
We have
leave
to go.
cities like this and
Now.
never look back.
I know. Let's move.
Water pooled in
Stay
the
with
gutters
me.
along Morrison Street, reflecting the neon glow of bar signs and late-night diners, turning the asphalt into a mirror of light and shadow. Inside the Ember and Iron,
Here
the
you
air
are,
was
sir.
warm and thick
Thank
with
you.
the smell
That looks
of whiskey
perfect. Enjoy.
and expensive cologne. This wasn't the kind of place where people came to forget. It was the kind of place where they came to be seen to make deals to celebrate victories they'd earned on someone else's back. The bar itself ran the length of the east wall, all dark mahogany and brass fixtures polished to a mirror shine. Bottles lined the shelves behind it like soldiers at attention top-shelf liquor, catching the amber light from vintage Edison bulbs hanging overhead. Leather boots hugged the perimeter, filled with men in suits and women in dresses that cost more than most people's monthly rent. At the far end of the bar, tucked into a corner booth where the light didn't quite reach, sat a man who didn't need to announce his presence. Dominic Castellano was 38 years old, but his eyes carried decades more. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that fit like it had been born on his frame, the jacket open to reveal a crisp white shirt with no tie. His dark hair was touched with gray at the temples, slicked back in a way that suggested control, discipline, precision. On his left hand, a gold ring caught the light. Engraved on it, barely visible unless you knew to look, was a single name, Rosalie. 3 men sat with him. Salvatore, called Sal by those who'd earned the right, was built like a defensive lineman who'd learned to move like a cat. Luca had the kind of face that never smiled, marked by a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. Matteo was the youngest, 28, with watchful eyes that missed nothing. They weren't drinking. They were waiting. Dominic lifted his espresso cup, a tiny thing that looked ridiculous in his broad hands, and took a sip. The coffee was bitter strong, the way his grandmother used to make it in the old country. He set the cup down without a sound. Across the bar near the entrance, a woman sat alone. Cassandra Thorne was 29, but tonight she felt ancient. She wore a worn leather jacket over a simple black sweater, dark jeans, and boots that had walked more miles than she cared to count. Her honey blonde hair fell past her shoulders, and her green eyes had a kind of stillness to them, the kind that comes from surviving things that should have destroyed you. She'd been beautiful once, in that carefree way young women are, before the world teaches them otherwise. She was still beautiful now, but it was different, harder, earned. Her phone sat face up on the bar beside an untouched glass of wine. On the screen, a single message from an hour ago. "I'm here if you need me." She didn't reply. This was something she needed to do alone. The bartender, a kid in his 20s with a man bun and sleeve tattoos, asked if she wanted another drink. She shook her head. He moved on to other customers, other problems. Cassie's hand went to her left ring finger, where a platinum band caught the light. The diamond wasn't huge, wasn't flashy, but it was real. The most real thing she'd owned in 5 years. She touched it like a talisman, like proof that she'd made it out, that she'd built something from the ashes of who she used to be. The door opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and exhaust. A man stumbled through shaking water from his coat. He was 32, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't twisted with something ugly. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie loosened, his expensive dress shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Brendan Wolfe had the look of a man who'd been drinking since lunch and had no plans to stop before dawn. He made his way to the bar, not seeing her at first. Or maybe he did see her, and his brain couldn't process it, couldn't reconcile the woman sitting there with the woman he'd left broken on a funeral home floor 5 years ago. He ordered bourbon top shelf, threw a 20 on the bar like it was nothing. The bartender poured, slurried the glass over, collected the bill. Brendan raised the glass to his lips, and that's when he saw her. His hand froze halfway to his mouth. The color drained from his face, then rushed back in a flood of red. His eyes went wide, then narrow, then wide again. Recognition, disbelief, rage. "Cassie." His voice cut through the low murmur of conversation like a knife. People turned to look. The bartender paused mid-pour. Cassie didn't move, didn't flinch, just looked at him with those calm green eyes like she was studying a specimen under glass. "What the hell are you doing here?" Brendan's voice climbed an octave, loud enough now that the entire bar could hear. The conversations died. Even the music seemed to lower, like the building itself was holding its breath. Cassie set her wine glass down, the stem between her fingers, perfectly composed. "Having a drink, Brendan? Same as you." "Having a..." He laughed, a harsh bark that held no humor. "You've got some nerve. 5 years you disappear, 5 years. Not a word, and now you just show up like nothing happened. I didn't come here for you." "Bullshit." He moved closer, unsteady on his feet, but propelled by alcohol and something darker. Old anger, old entitlement, the kind that had been festering in his gut since the night she'd vanished. You came back to what? To haunt me, to ruin my life again. In the corner booth, Dominic set his espresso cup down. The tiny clink of porcelain on wood was barely audible, but Sal heard it. Luca heard it. Matteo heard it. They didn't move. Not yet. But they were ready. Brendan was close enough now that Cassie could smell the whiskey on his breath, could see the broken capillaries in his nose, the puffiness of around his eyes that came from too many nights like this. I'm not here to ruin anything, Brendan. I'm just passing through. Passing through, he sneered the words. Back to what? Your sad little life, your dead-end job. She didn't answer. That seemed to enrage him more. You know what your problem always was, Cassie? You never knew your place. Always thought you were better than what you had, better than me. I never thought that. Liar. He was shouting now, spittle flying. You walked around like you were some kind of princess, like you deserved more. Well, look at you now. 5 years later, and you're still nothing. Still nobody. The bartender stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to... Shut up. Brendan didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on Cassie, burning with years of resentment that had curdled into something toxic. You remember what I told you the day I left? He leaned in close, invading her space. I said you were dragging me down, that you were weak, that I couldn't save someone who wouldn't save themselves. Cassie's jaw tightened, the only sign that his words were landing. I was right, wasn't I? Look at you, still pathetic, still alone. I'm not alone, Brendan. Yeah, he looked around theatrically. I don't see anybody, no friends, no family, just you sitting at a bar by yourself drinking cheap wine. Exactly where I knew you'd end up. He reached out as if to grab her arm, to shake her, to make her look at him with the fear and desperation he remembered. She pulled back, but not fast enough. His hand closed around her wrist, tight enough to hurt. Don't you walk away from me. I'm talking to you. Let go. Or what are you going to do? Cassie cried, beg. That's all you ever did. Cry and beg and make yourself the victim. In the corner booth, Dominic stood. The movement was fluid, unhurried, but it carried weight. Every eye in the bar felt it, even if they didn't understand why. Cassie tried to pull her wrist free, but Brendan's grip tightened. His face was inches from hers now, his breath hot and sour. You want to know the truth? Your father dying was the best thing that could have happened, because it showed me what you really were. Weak, needy, a burden I was stupid enough to carry. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Cassie's free hand curled into a fist, but she didn't swing. Didn't scream. Just looked at him with something that might have been pity. That made it worse. Brendan shoved her, hard. She stumbled backward, her hips slamming into the bar. Glasses rattled. Ice clinked. A cocktail glass tipped over, to spilling pink liquid across the polished wood. The bartender shouted something. A woman gasped. Someone pulled out their phone, started recording. Brendan followed her, crowding her against the bar, his face twisted with rage. You think you're better than me now? You think running away made you strong? His hand shot out again, this time shoving her shoulder. You're nothing. You've always been nothing, and your father died knowing that. Cassie's eyes flashed. For the first time, genuine anger broke through her composure. Don't you dare. What? Tell the truth. He was enjoying this, now feeding on her reaction. He died because you couldn't take care of him. Because you were too weak, too pathetic to... He didn't finish the sentence. His foot came up, driven by alcohol and malice, and 5 years of unprocessed shame. It connected with her ribs just below her left arm. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough. Cassie went down, not dramatically. She didn't scream or cry out, just dropped to one knee, her hands shooting out to catch herself on the sticky bar floor. Her palm landed on something sharp, a shard from a glass broken earlier and never properly cleaned. Pain bloomed across her side, sharp and hot, but she didn't make a sound. The bar went completely silent. Even Brendan seemed startled by what he'd done, his foot still raised like he couldn't quite believe he'd crossed that line. His face flickered with something that might have been shame, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by defiance. Stay down, he said, his voice quieter now, but no less cruel. That's where you belong. Cassie knelt there, one hand on the floor, the other pressed to her ribs. Her honey blonde hair fell across her face, hiding her expression. Her chest rose and fell with controlled breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth, measured, calm, because she knew something Brendan didn't. She'd felt her phone buzz against her hip 2 minutes ago, a pattern she recognized. One long vibration, too short. On my way, the air in the bar changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in pressure like a storm rolling in from somewhere dark and distant. The conversations that had started to resume died again. Someone near the door stood up abruptly, knocking their chair backward. The door to the ember and iron swung open. Three men entered first. They moved with the kind of silence that makes a room hold its breath. Broad-shouldered, dressed in black suits that looked expensive, even under the dim bar lighting. Their faces were stone eyes scanning the room with professional detachment. Sal had close-cropped hair and that scar cutting through his eyebrow. Luca was massive, his hands hanging loose at his sides like weapons waiting to be deployed. Matteo wore dark sunglasses despite the low light, his jaw set like granite. They fanned out, flanking the entrance, creating a perimeter. Then came the fourth man. Dominic Castellano didn't rush, didn't need to. He crossed the threshold like he owned it, like he owned everything his gaze touched. The charcoal suit moved with him, perfectly tailored to his athletic frame. The white shirt was crisp, open at the collar, no tie. But it was the tattoos that caught the eye. Ink crawled up his neck like warnings written in a language everyone understood, but nobody spoke aloud. A raven in flight. The name Rosalie in script. Words in Italian that promised things best left unspoken. His eyes swept the room, once cold and calculating. Then they locked onto Cassie, kneeling on the floor. Everything else ceased to exist. Brendan turned, his smirk still in place but starting to crack at the edges. The alcohol in his system hadn't caught up with his survival instincts yet. What the hell is this? Some kind of rescue squad? Dominic didn't answer. He crossed the floor with measured steps, glass crunching under his Ferragamo leather shoes. When he reached Cassie, he knelt beside her, his movements gentle in a way that contradicted everything else about him. "Talk to me." His voice was low, controlled, almost tender. Cassie looked up at him, and something passed between them. Something private, something that made the air feel charged. Dominic helped her to her feet with one hand, the other steadying her elbow. He shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The fabric still held his warmth, the faint scent of his cologne. Brendan laughed. The sound was wrong now, uncertain. "Okay, seriously, who the hell are you, her new boyfriend?" Dominic turned slowly. He adjusted his cuffs with deliberate care, revealing a gold Rolex on his left wrist and that ring with Rosalie's name on his right hand. When he spoke, his voice was soft as silk and sharp as broken glass. "Husband." The word crushed the room. Brendan's face went slack, then twisted, then slack again, cycling through disbelief and mockery and something that might have been fear. "Husband." Hurt, he gestured at Cassie dismissively, but his hand shook slightly. "That's cute, real cute. Did you pick her up at some charity event? Some shelter for sad, pathetic—" "Stop talking." 2 words. Quiet. Final. Brendan's mouth clicked shut. The survival instinct was kicking in now, cutting through the whiskey fog. His eyes darted to the 3 men in suits positioned around the room, to the door now closed, to the other patrons who were suddenly very interested in their drinks. "Look, I don't know who you think you are. I know exactly who I am." Dominic's tone never changed. Still conversational, still terrifying. "The question is whether you understand what you just did." He took a step closer. Brendan took a step back, bumping into a bar stool. It scraped loudly against the floor. "You put your hands on my wife, in public, in front of witnesses." "I didn't know she was married," Dominic finished. "So you assault women as long as you do not know their husbands. That's your defense." A nervous laugh escaped from somewhere in the back of the bar, quickly stifled. Brendan's face flushed red. "That's not what I meant. I meant I didn't know she was married to—" He trailed off because he didn't actually know, didn't understand what name carried weight in this city, what colors meant territory, what silence meant death. But he was starting to guess. Dominic reached into his jacket pocket. Brendan flinched, actually flinched like he expected a gun. What Dominic pulled out was worse. A phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward Brendan. 8 years ago, a man tried to move stolen electronics through my warehouse in Saddle. High-end merchandise. Laptops, phones, cameras. He didn't ask permission, didn't offer tribute. Just set up shop and started selling. Brendan's face changed. A subtle shift. Recognition mixed with dread. "I don't know what your Harrison Street warehouse district. You were working with Tommy Reeves. His cousin had a connection to a shipping company, got you access to damaged merchandise that was supposed to be destroyed." Dominic's voice was that of a man reciting facts from a ledger. No emotion, just data. You sold it under market value, made decent money for about 3 months. Then one night, two men showed up, took the inventory and left. You filed a police report, but nothing came of it. You assumed it was a random robbery. He paused, letting it sink in. It was me. The confession landed like a physical blow. Brendan's eyes widened, his breath coming in short gasps. You were operating in my territory without permission, but you were small-time insignificant. So I just took the merchandise and let you go. Sent you a message without sending you to the hospital. Dominic took another step forward. Brendan backed into the bar, trapped. I spared you because you weren't worth the trouble. That was mercy. I give mercy once, maybe twice if I'm feeling generous. Never 3 times. Sal had moved closer without Brendan noticing. The large man stood just behind him, a silent presence that made the air feel thinner. But you made a choice that night, didn't you, Brendan, when the police came asking questions? Dominic's eyes were cold, merciless. You told them it was all Tommy Reeves' idea, that you'd been coerced. Tommy went to prison. 5 years in Walla Walla, lost his wife, his kid, everything. Brendan's face went white. When he got out in 2022, he couldn't put his life back together. 6 months later, he ate his gun in a motel room in Spokane, left behind a daughter who will never know her father. I didn't know he'd... You didn't care. Dominic's voice cut like a scalpel. You chose yourself over him, just like you chose yourself over Cassie 5 years ago. Just like you've chosen yourself over everyone your entire life. He leaned in close enough that only Brendan could hear. Tonight, you stopped being nothing. Tonight, you became a problem. Cassie stepped forward then, and Dominic moved aside to let her speak. She looked at Brendan with something complex in her eyes. Not quite satisfaction, not quite pity. You asked me what I think you owe, she said quietly. Brendan didn't answer. The truth. You owe me the truth about why you really left. That's not... Yes, it is. Cassie's certainty was absolute. You left because my grief reminded you that you're capable of loss. That bad things happen to people you care about, and you couldn't handle that fear. So you ran. She moved closer. You left because you were scared, and you've spent 5 years telling yourself it was my fault so you wouldn't have to admit you were a coward. The word echoed in the silence. Brendan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came. Cassie turned to Dominic. He can't even be honest with himself. Dominic nodded to Sal. What happened next was precise, professional. Sal's hand closed around Brendan's upper arm. Brendan yelped, tried to pull away. Wait, wait! Brendan's voice climbed into panic. You can't do this. There are witnesses. Dominic surveyed the room. You're right. They are watching. He raised his voice slightly. Everyone here saw what happened tonight. Saw this man assault my wife unprovoked. Saw him kick her while she was on the ground. Nods around the room. Nervous, reluctant, but confirmation. What happens next is justice. Not the kind that comes from courtrooms or police reports. The kind that comes from understanding that actions have consequences. He paused. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. Walk out those doors. Go home. Forget you were here. No questions asked. Silence. Nobody moved. Sal and Luca positioned Brendan between them. Dominic stepped back, rolled up his sleeves. The tattoos on his forearms became visible. The first punch was precise, a sharp jab to Brendan's solar plexus. The second, a hook to the ribs. Each strike calculated. Cassie watched without flinching. Around the room, people watched in horrified silence. After 2 minutes, Dominic stepped back. His knuckles were split. Brendan hung between the enforcers, barely conscious. Dominic cleaned his hands with a white handkerchief, then turned to Cassie. Enough, she looked at Brendan, really looked at him. Not yet, she said. She approached Brendan, knelt to his eye level. You remember what you said the day you left, that my father died because I didn't take care of him well enough. Brendan's eyes flickered. That wasn't true. He died of a stroke. Nothing could have stopped it. But you said it to control me, to make me think everything was my fault. That was violence, too. Not with fists, but with words. She stood. I forgive you, Brendan. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free of you. She turned to Dominic. Now I'm done. Dominic addressed Brendan one final time. You have a choice. Leave this city tonight. Drive east. Never come back. Never speak her name. He gestured to Mateo, who tossed car keys at Brendan's feet. Blue sedan in the alley. $800 in the console. Registration is clean. Dominic leaned down. Or stay. Go to the police. Try to press charges. But if you do, I'll finish what I started. And next time there won't be witnesses. Brendan's mouth worked. I'll go, I swear. Good. Mateo and Luca dragged him toward the back exit. The door opened. Brendan disappeared into the night. Dominic took Cassie's hand. Let's go home. They walked out together, leaving the bar and its witnesses behind. Outside, a black Mercedes waited. They climbed in, and the car pulled away into the rainy Portland night. In the back seat, Dominic held Cassie's hand, tracing the scars on her palm. You okay? I will be. The city lights blurred past as they drove toward the hills, toward home, toward a future they'd built from the wreckage of their pasts. Behind them, the ember and iron returned to its normal rhythm. The bartender mopped blood from the floor. The witnesses went home with a story they'd carry like a secret. And somewhere on I-84 East, Brendan Wolfe gripped a steering wheel with shaking hands and wondered if it was too late to become someone different. The Mercedes climbed into the West Hills, leaving Portland's lights behind. Cassie watched the city shrink in the window, her hand still in Dominic's, his thumb making slow circles across her knuckles. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind a hollow ache that had nothing to do with her bruised ribs. She'd seen Brendan broken, seen him afraid, and she felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just the quiet emptiness of a chapter finally closed. The car turned through wrought iron gates, climbing a private drive lined with Italian cypress. At the top sat a modernist villa, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, glowing warm against the November night. Home. Inside the house was warm, minimalist, expensive, in the way that whispers rather than shouts. Polished concrete floors, mid-century furniture. But it was the photographs that made it a home. Black and white images in simple frames. A young girl with dark hair and a gap-toothed smile. The same girl, older, maybe 13, holding a diploma. Another of her in a hospital bed, thin and frail, but still smiling. Rosalie. Dominic steered Cassie to the leather sofa facing the windows. Bourbon, he asked. Whiskey. Neat. He poured 2 glasses of Pappy Van Winkle, the amber liquid catching the light. They drank in silence. Do you want to talk about it? Dominic finally asked. I thought it would feel different, she said quietly, seeing him again, watching him get what he deserved. How did you think it would feel? Like closure, like justice, like I'd finally be free of him. She took another sip. But I just feel tired. Dominic set his glass down. You want to know what I felt the first time I made a man pay for hurting someone I loved? Cassie turned to look at him. I felt nothing, he said. Complete emptiness. Because revenge doesn't bring them back. It just closes a door that should have been closed a long time ago. Who was it? The man who killed my sister. Dominic stood, moved to the window. His reflection ghosted over the city lights. I was 18 when Rosalie died. She was 16. His voice was measured, controlled, but Cassie heard the fracture lines beneath it. She was dating this guy, Kyle Morrison. 19 years old, worked at an auto shop, seemed decent, polite, respectful, the kind of guy you'd trust with your little sister. Dominic's hand curled into a fist against the glass. I was working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Our mother had died giving birth to Rosalie. Our father drank himself to death when I was 15. It was just the 2 of us. I was barely keeping it together, but Rosalie was smart, top of her class, full scholarship to state. She was going to be a doctor. Cassie set her glass down, giving him her full attention. I didn't see the signs, the long sleeves in summer, the bruises she said were from soccer, the way she flinched when someone raised their voice. His reflection looked like a man drowning. It started small. Kyle got jealous if she talked to other guys. Controlled who she saw, what she wore. Then the hitting started. A slap, a shove, then worse. Dominic turned to face her. The night she died, Kyle had been drinking. He accused her of cheating. Beat her, broke 3 of her ribs. When she tried to call for help, he grabbed the phone. Then he pushed her down the stairs. Broke her neck. She died instantly. Cassie felt her chest tighten. Kyle called it an accident, said she fell. And because he was sober by the time police arrived, because there were no witnesses, because our justice system is a joke, he walked. Dominic sat down heavily. I found him 3 weeks later, took him to an empty warehouse, and I spent 90 seconds showing him exactly what he'd done to my sister. 90 seconds. That's how long it took for him to die. Precise, efficient, no unnecessary cruelty, but no mercy either. Just justice. He looked at his hands. I was 18 years old and I'd just committed murder. But all I felt was empty, because Rosalie was still gone. Cassie reached for his hand. How did you end up with Don Vittorio? A ghost of a smile crossed Dominic's face. The warehouse belonged to him. He had cameras, saw everything. I thought he was going to have me killed, but he didn't. No, he asked me one question. Do you regret it? I said no. He said, good. A man who protects family has value. Come work for me. Dominic squeezed her hand. That was 20 years ago. I started as muscle, worked my way up. Don Vittorio taught me everything. How to run an organization, how to inspire loyalty, how to be ruthless when necessary and merciful when possible. And when he retired, he gave me 7 districts, 200 men, and one piece of advice. Never forget why you started. The moment you stop protecting the weak, you become what you once destroyed. Cassie understood now. The foundation beneath the empire. The night we met at Rosalie's, when those men were harassing the staff. You stepped in without fear. Handled it with words, not violence. Dominic's eyes held hers. You reminded me what strength actually looks like. I wasn't strong, I was terrified. You were terrified and you did it anyway. That's courage. He pulled down a leather-bound album from the bookshelf, opened it. The first page held a photograph. Rosalie at 7, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a stuffed rabbit. This was her favorite toy, Mr. Hopscotch. He turned the page. Rosalie at 12 in a soccer uniform holding a trophy. She made all state. Another page. Rosalie at 15 in a hospital bed, thin but smiling. Pneumonia. She was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I slept in that chair every night. Cassie saw it then. The careful preservation of memory. The foundation. Rosalie's light. You started it for her. 3 months after she died. Every dollar I'd made working for Don Vittorio went into creating a fund. Legal help for women trying to leave abusive relationships. Safe houses. Financial support. He closed the album. In 20 years, we've helped 183 women and children. 87 of them are alive today because someone gave them a way out. And the other 96 went back, gave their abusers another chance. Some made it out eventually, some didn't. The pain in his voice was acute. When you walked into Rosalie's 4 years ago, I saw it immediately. The wariness in your eyes. The careful way you moved like you expected the world to hit you if you took up too much space. I didn't realize I was that obvious. You weren't, not to most people, but I'd seen it before. Dominic traced the line of Cassie's jaw with his thumb. I told myself I was just watching out for an employee. But the truth is I was falling in love with you before I even knew your last name. You did. Cassie felt tears prick her eyes. You never said. I was afraid that if I pursued you, I'd be like every other man who'd seen vulnerability and tried to exploit it. So you waited. For 6 months. Until you smiled at me without wariness. Until you laughed and it sounded genuine. Until you looked at me like I was a man, not a threat. He leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. And even then I made sure you had options. Your own money, your own place, your own power. Cassie remembered the careful courtship. When did you know about Brendan? The 3rd time we had dinner. You mentioned your father dying and something flickered across your face. Pain, yes, but also abandonment. You didn't ask. You weren't ready, so I waited, and when you finally told me 6 months later, I listened. Dominic's voice hardened. That's when I had him investigated. Found out about Seattle, about Tommy Reeves, about every shitty thing he'd done. Built a file 3 inches thick. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't my story to tell. It was yours. My job was to be there when you were ready to face it. Cassie pulled back slightly. You knew I'd want to come back to Portland eventually. I suspected, and when you said you were ready, I made sure I was prepared. Had him followed for 2 weeks. Made sure I could be there within 5 minutes if you needed me. The text, when I sent on my way, you were already outside. Parked 2 blocks away. Sal was inside pretending to be a customer. Luca was in the kitchen. We had eyes on you the whole time. She should have been angry, but she wasn't. Thank you for letting me do it my way, for not storming in the moment he touched me, for waiting until I needed you. Dominic cupped her face in his hands. You didn't need me to fight your battles. You needed me to have your back while you fought them yourself. He kissed her gentle, despite the violence his hands had committed hours before. When they pulled apart, she rested her head on his shoulder. What happens now? We live, we heal, we build something better than what we lost. And Brendan, Mateo will track him for 6 months. Make sure he keeps driving east, keeps his head down. If he stays quiet, we let him go. If he comes back, Dominic didn't finish. He didn't need to. They sat in silence, looking out at the city. I love you, Cassie said. Not for the first time, but with new weight. I love you, Dominic replied, for who you are, for who you were, for who you're becoming. Cassie shifted, wincing. Come on, Dominic said, standing. Bath, ice, bed, in that order. You know I can take care of myself, right? I do, but you don't have to. He led her upstairs to the master suite, ran the bath hot added salts that smelled of eucalyptus, helped her out of her clothes with clinical efficiency. She sank into the water with a sigh. Dominic sat on the tub's edge, washing her hair with gentle hands. Tell me about Seattle, Cassie said. What really happened with Brendan? Dominic's hands paused, then resumed. 8 years ago, I was consolidating territory. Vittorio had just given me Seattle, and people were testing boundaries. Brendan and Tommy got a tip about damaged electronics. Set up shop in one of my warehouses without permission. He rinsed her hair. I sent 2 men. They went in mass, took the inventory, left. Clean, efficient. No one hurt because they weren't worth hurting. But Brendan blamed Tommy. Went to the police, said it was all Tommy's idea, that he'd been coerced. Tommy took the fall, did 5 years. Got out in 2022, couldn't readjust. His wife had left, his kid didn't know him. He ate his gun 6 months later. Cassie felt sick. Does Brendan know? Not until tonight. I wanted him to understand that his cowardice has a body count. She turned to look at him. You've been carrying that. Tommy's death. I could have intervened, could have told the truth, but I didn't because keeping my operation quiet was more important than one small-time thief. It wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? I run this city. Everything that happens in my territory is my responsibility. She reached up, wet hand cupping his face. You can't save everyone. I know, but I can remember them. Tommy Reeves, Kyle Morrison. Every person who died because I wasn't fast enough, smart enough, ruthless enough. He stood, grabbed a towel. That's why Rosalie's light exists. That's why I help people. Because for every person I can't save, maybe I can save 2 more. Cassie stood, water streaming off her body. Dominic wrapped her in the towel. In the bedroom, he'd laid out her favorite silk pajamas. He helped her dress, then pressed an ice pack to her ribs. 20 minutes, then I'll check the bruising again. They lay in bed, Cassie curled into his side. Do you ever think about leaving? Cassie asked. Getting out of this life. Every day, and never. That doesn't make sense. Neither does loving someone enough to kill for them, but not wanting to become a killer. But here we are. Cassie traced the tattoos on his forearm, names she recognized now. Rosalie, Don Vittorio, Maria Santos. You carry them all, she said. Someone has to remember. And what about your life? When does it get to mean something beyond revenge and protection? Dominic was quiet for a long time. When I met you, that's when my life started meaning something beyond the past. He turned to face her. Before you, I was existing, going through the motions. You changed that. You made me want tomorrow. Made me think about futures instead of just preventing tragedies. He pulled her closer, careful of her ribs. I used to dream about Rosalie every night, her falling down those stairs over and over. Me running but never fast enough to catch her. Used to. Now I dream about you, our life, the home we'll build, the family we might have. Cassie felt her breath catch. Do you want that family? I want whatever makes you happy. If that's kids, then yes. If it's just us, that's enough, too. What if I wanted to leave Portland? Then we leave. Sal can handle operations. I'm ready to step back if you are. She studied his face, looking for the lie. Found none. You'd really give this up, the power of the empire? In a heartbeat, because it was never about power. It was about making sure no one else's sister died alone and afraid. And I've built something that will outlive me. He kissed her forehead. I just need to be wherever you are. Cassie felt something crack open inside her chest. The last wall, the final defense, the fear that this too would be taken away. But looking at him now, she understood. This was different. I'm pregnant, she said. The words hung in the air. Dominic went completely still. His hand on her hip tightened. You're 4 months. I found out 2 weeks ago. I've been waiting for the right time. 4 months, he tested the words. We're having a baby. Are you okay with that? He laughed, a sound of pure joy she'd heard maybe twice before in their years together. Am I okay with it, Cassandra? I'm terrified and thrilled and already imagining what they'll look like. He shifted his hand, moving to her stomach. A baby, our baby. If it's a girl, Cassie said, I want to name her Rosalie. Dominic's eyes filled with tears. She'd seen him cry twice before. Once for Rosalie, his sister. Once when she'd agreed to marry him. Now this was the third time. And if it's a boy, Robert. After my father, he pulled her close, his face buried in her hair, his shoulders shaking. They would have loved each other, he said finally. Your father and my sister. So let's give them better. Let's build something they would have been proud of. Dominic pulled back. No more violence. After tonight, I'm done. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I'm not bringing a child into a world where their father comes home with blood on his hands. He kissed her deep and thorough. Thank you for trusting me, for letting me be part of this, for giving me a chance to be better. You've always been better. You just couldn't see it. Outside, the city continued its rotation. Somewhere Brendan crossed into Idaho. Somewhere a woman made the choice to survive one more day. And here in this bedroom, two people who'd learned that love required respect, that protection could be given without control, held each other and planned for tomorrows they'd earned through surviving yesterday. Cassie smiled against his chest. That's all I need. They fell asleep tangled together, two people who'd lost everything and found each other in the wreckage. In the morning, Dominic would make calls, start transitioning power, begin planning their exit. In the morning, Cassie would schedule appointments, begin thinking about motherhood, about hope. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, they simply held each other and breathed. And somewhere in the space between revenge and redemption, justice and mercy, two souls found what they'd been searching for. Not perfection, not absolution, just the chance to try again. 3 months passed like winter giving way to spring. In Denver, Colorado, Brendan Wolfe woke each morning in a studio apartment that smelled of instant coffee and regret. The place was small, barely 400 square feet. Murphy bed, kitchenette with hot plate. Bathroom so cramped he turned sideways to close the door. The radiator clanked all night. Neighbors fought at 2 a.m. with metronomic regularity. It was nothing like his old life. But he was alive. He stood at the window overlooking a parking lot sipping gas station coffee. His face had healed mostly. The swelling was gone. The bruises faded. But when he looked in the mirror, he still saw what Dominic Castellano's fists had done. More than that, he saw what he'd done to himself. The job was simple. Data entry at Morrison and Associates. His boss, Diane Morrison, wore reading glasses on a chain and kept grandchildren photos on her desk. She'd hired him as Brian West, no questions, paying just enough above minimum wage for rent and groceries. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he walked 6 blocks to a building that smelled of industrial cleaner and sat in a circle with 8 others who'd done things they regretted. Dr. Patricia Morrison, the therapist who ran the group, was 42, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a way of asking questions that made you confront truths you'd spent years avoiding. Brian, she said at his 8th session, how are you feeling? Brendan took a moment, tired, angry, ashamed all at once. What are you angry about? Everything. Getting caught, getting beaten, having to run. And the shame. Brendan looked at his hands. I know what I did. I know who I was, am. I don't know how to fix it. Dr. Morrison nodded. Healing isn't about fixing. It's about accepting what you've done and choosing to be different. Have you been journaling? He had. Every night in a spiral notebook hidden under his mattress, he wrote. About Cassie, about his father who'd walked out, about his mother who'd worked 3 jobs and died of a heart attack at 52, about the man he'd tried to be and the monster he'd become. Yeah, I've been writing. Good, keep going. After group, Brendan walked home through alien familiar streets. Denver wasn't Portland. It was bigger, sprawling mountains looming west like promises of escape. He was 3 blocks from his apartment when he saw her. At first, he thought he was hallucinating, but there, standing under a streetlight outside a coffee shop, was Cassandra Thorne. She looked different. Hair longer, pulled back in a ponytail. Cream sweater that looked soft and expensive. No armor. She looked happy, healthy, whole. Brendan's first instinct was to run, his second to hide. His third, which surprised him, was to approach. He did none of those. Just stood there, frozen, heart hammering. Cassie saw him. Their eyes met across 20 feet. She walked toward him, keeping 3 feet of distance. Brendan. Cassie, what are you doing here? I wanted to see how you were living. He laughed bitterly. Come to check if I'm suffering enough. He doesn't know I'm here. I came alone. That caught him off guard. Why, Cassie considered. Closure for both of us. Can we talk? Every instinct screamed no, but he'd spent 3 months learning to stop running. Okay. The coffee shop was aggressively hipster. Exposed brick Edison bulbs chalkboard menu. They ordered. Cassie paid, despite protests. Sat at a window table. For a long moment, neither spoke. You look different, Cassie said. So do you. Good different or bad different? Brendan studied her, the softness in her face, the absence of that hunted look. Good, you look happy. I am. And you? He wanted to lie, but looking at her he couldn't. I'm trying, therapy, honest job, living small and quiet. Do you like it? I hate it, but I think I need it. Need to learn how to just to be without needing to prove I'm somebody. Cassie nodded. Dominic told me about Tommy Reeves. Brendan's stomach dropped. I know, that doesn't make it better. She leaned forward. You made a choice 8 years ago, to save yourself by sacrificing someone else. Tommy went to prison, lost his family, killed himself, and you never looked back. I couldn't. If I'd confessed, so you chose yourself again. The words hit like a slap. I did, Brendan said quietly. I chose myself over Tommy, over you, over everyone, because I was scared and selfish and convinced I deserved to win, even if others lost. Do you still believe that? No, maybe. I don't know. I'm working on it. He took a breath. Dr. Morrison says I have fragile narcissism, that I'm so terrified of being worthless that I constantly have to prove I'm better than everyone. That's why I controlled you. Why I left when things got hard. Why I blamed you for your father's death. His voice cracked. Because admitting I was weak, that I was scared, that would have meant I was the worthless one. So I made it your fault. Cassie listened without interrupting. Thank you for saying that. Does it change anything? No, but it helps. She pulled an envelope from her purse, set it on the table. What's this? Open it. And inside was a check over $4,000 and a note. This is the money you took from me 5 years ago. I'm returning it so we're even. No debts. When you cash this, we're done. He stared at it, vision blurring. I can't take this. You can, you will, because I don't want to carry it anymore. I don't want to wonder if you owe me something or if I owe you the satisfaction of knowing you hurt me. Cassie's voice was firm. Cash it, use it for therapy or rent or whatever. And then we're finished. No more connection, no more history, just two strangers who used to know each other. Brendan's hands shook. I don't deserve this. Probably not, but I deserve to be free of you. And this is what it costs. She stood gathering her purse. Wait, can I ask you something? One question. Do you think I can change? Really change? Cassie looked at him for a long time. I think you can. Whether you will depends on whether you're willing to keep doing the hard work even when it hurts, even when no one's watching, even when you don't think you deserve to get better. She paused at the door. Don't come back to Portland. Don't try to contact me. The kindest thing you can do is disappear. I will. I promise. Good. And then she was gone. Brendan sat there for an hour, the check in his hands like a verdict. Finally, he folded it, put it in his wallet, and walked home through streets that felt less alien. That night, he wrote in his journal, saw Cassie today. She gave me money, said we're even. I don't know if we are, but she looks happy, really happy, and maybe that's all the forgiveness I'll get. Dr. Morrison says I need to forgive myself. I don't know how, but I can keep trying, keep going to group, keep working, keep learning to be someone different. Cassie said the kindest thing I could do is disappear. So that's what I'll do. He closed the notebook, turned off the light. It wasn't peace, but it was a start. 6 months after that November night, Portland bloomed into spring. The city dressed itself in green and gold. Cherry blossoms gave way to azaleas. The air smelled of coffee and rain and new beginnings. On a Wednesday morning in late April, a small storefront on Division Street opened its doors. The sign read Second Chances Bakery. Inside was warm and welcoming. White brick walls, reclaimed wood tables, vintage chairs, a display case filled with pastries almost too beautiful to eat. The scent of vanilla and butter wrapped around you like a hug. Behind the counter stood Carol Thompson, 46, wearing a white apron dusted with flour and a smile that hadn't existed 6 months ago. She'd left her husband in December. Packed a bag, took her daughter Emma, drove straight to the address on Dominic's card. They'd put her in a safe apartment. connected her with a lawyer, helped her file a restraining order, got Emma into school, found her this space. Now she was a business owner, a baker, a survivor who'd learned to stand. The bell chimed. Carol looked up. Cassandra Castellano stood in the doorway, one hand on her very pregnant belly, the other held by her husband. Dominic looked different in daylight, less intimidating. Maybe it was the way he looked at his wife like she was made of something precious, or the way he held her hand protective but not possessive. "Carol," Cassie said, smiling, "it's beautiful." Carol came around the counter fighting tears. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You did the hard part," Dominic said. "We just provided resources." "Resources?" Carol laughed. "You gave me my life back." She gestured to the tables. "What can I get you?" "Everything's on the house." Cassie ordered a cinnamon roll and decaf coffee. Dominic got espresso and a croissant. They sat by the window. "How are you feeling?" Carol asked, bringing their order. "How far along?" 7 months. She's active." Cassie rubbed her tenderly. "Kicks me every time I try to sleep." She burped. "Rosalie. Rosalie Marie Castellano." Carol saw something flicker across Dominic's face. Grief and joy and gratitude mixed together. "That's beautiful. What about you? How's Emma?" "Thriving. Honor roll last semester. Wants to be a pastry chef like her mom." Carol's voice caught. 6 months ago she was having nightmares every night. Now she's talking about culinary school. "Kids are resilient," Dominic said quietly. "So are their mothers." They finished breakfast, said goodbye, walked out into the spring morning. Their car, a sleek black Audi, was parked at the curb. Not the Mercedes. They'd sold that months ago. Marcus, the driver, held the door. "Where to, boss? Home." Not the villa in West Hills. They'd sold that too. Now they lived in a Craftsman in Laurelhurst quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and families who walk dogs in the evening. Room for a swing set and sandbox. They drove in silence, Cassie's hand on Dominic's knee. When they pulled into the driveway, Cassie noticed the unmarked van across the street. FBI or local. Dominic had seen it. FBI. Agent Reeves has been building a case for 6 months. Any progress? None, because there's nothing to find. I've been clean since November. Does it bother you? Let them watch. All they'll see is a businessman and a husband taking care of his pregnant wife. Inside the house smelled of fresh paint and new furniture. They'd moved in 2 months ago, Cassie still nesting, arranging the nursery. Cassie went upstairs to rest. Pregnancy was harder now. Back aching, ankles swelling, sleep fitful. Dominic watched her go chest tight with protectiveness. 7 months ago, he'd beaten a man in a bar. Been the kind of man who solved problems with fists. Now he was going to be a father. His phone rang. "Sal, talk to me." "Problem. Vincent Torino wants to renegotiate the waterfront deal." Vincent Torino, mid-level player with aspirations. The kind who push boundaries. What's he want? Bigger cut. Says he's got connections that could make permits disappear. Dominic felt old anger rise. The instinct to send Sal and Luca to have a conversation that ended with Vincent understanding his place. He took a breath. "Set up a meeting. Public place. Just me and him. No muscle." "Boss, that's the new way, Sal. We negotiate. We handle things like businessmen." Sal was quiet. "You really meant it. About getting out." "I really meant it. Once the waterfront's done, I'm handing everything to you. I'll keep advisory role, but operations enforcement, that's yours." "What are you going to do?" Dominic looked upstairs. "Be a father? A husband? Maybe take up golf?" Sal laughed. "You'd be terrible at golf." "Probably, but I'm going to try." That evening, Dominic met Vincent at a steakhouse in the Pearl. Vincent was younger than expected, 35, slicked back hair, suit, expensive enough to suggest success but not power. Practiced smile. They ordered steaks, made small talk. When food came, Vincent leaned back. "I appreciate you meeting Mr. Castellano. Call me Dominic, and I'm less busy than I used to be." "I've heard. Word is you're stepping back." "Word travels fast." "What do you want, Vincent?" "The waterfront. I think my cut was undervalued. I'm bringing connections that make this possible." "You're bringing one councilman who's being investigated for corruption. Your contribution is minimal." Vincent's smile tightened. "I could make problems, delays, permit issues." Dominic set his fork down. "You could try, but let me explain something. I'm getting out because I'm about to be a father. Because I want my daughter to grow up knowing I built things instead of destroying them." He leaned forward. "But getting out doesn't mean I've forgotten how things work. It doesn't mean I've lost connections or influence. It just means I'd rather use them to create than punish. Vincent swallowed hard. So here's what's happening. You accept your original 15%. You keep your councilman in line. In exchange, when this succeeds, you get credit. Your name on plaques. Recognition as a developer. And if I say no, then I make a phone call, and that FBI agent watching my house starts watching yours. I wonder what he'd find. The threat hung unspoken but clear. Vincent's face cycled through expressions before settling on resigned acceptance. 15% is fair. I thought you'd see it that way. They finished in strained civility, shook hands, went separate ways. In the car, Marcus asked, "How'd it go?" He agreed. "You didn't have to threaten, I did. But with words. No blood. Just the reminder that power doesn't only come from fists." Marcus smiled. The old man would be proud. Don Vittorio had died 3 years ago. His last words to Dominic, "You were always the son I should have had. Don't waste that by becoming me." Now Dominic understood. When he got home, Cassie was asleep on the couch, pregnancy book on her belly. He covered her with a blanket, kissed her forehead. Upstairs in the nursery, the room was almost finished. Pale yellow walls, white crib with cloudmobile, rocking chair by the window, books already on shelves. On the wall above the crib, in simple script, Rosalie Marie Castellano, in memory of Rosalie Marie Romano and Robert James Thorne, the ghost they were honoring. Dominic sat in the rocking chair, testing its motion, imagining holding his daughter here, feeding her at 3 a.m., watching her grow. For so long, his life had been about the past, about avenging his sister, about protecting women who reminded him of her. Now it was about the future. Behind him, Cassie appeared. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." She waddled over. He helped her sit in his lap, both somehow fitting. "What are you thinking about? How different this is from what I imagined." "Good, different, or bad?" "Terrifyingly good." Cassie took his hand, placed it on her belly. He felt Rosalie kick. "She's going to be a fighter," Cassie said, "like her mother. And her father. I was never a fighter. I just used violence because I didn't know another way." Cassie turned. "You fought for me, for Carol, for every woman through Rosalie's light. That's fighting too. But with fists. And now with resources, with influence, with example. That's evolution." He rested his forehead against hers. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of failing her, of being the kind of father who teaches violence, of passing on damage instead of healing it. Then we'll heal it together. We'll teach her strength isn't about dominating, it's about protecting what matters." Rosalie kicked again, as if agreeing. They sat like that, 3 heartbeats in rhythm, a family being born one quiet moment at a time. 2 months later, on a Sunday in late June, Rosalie Marie Castellano entered the world screaming. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Dark hair, green eyes. Came into the world angry and let everyone know. Dominic held her for the first time in a hospital room, smelling of antiseptic and new beginnings, and wept. Not silent tears. Full body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken, a wound finally starting to close. This was the 3rd time Cassie had seen him cry. Once for Rosalie, his sister. Once when she told him about the pregnancy. Now for Rosalie, his daughter. "She's beautiful," he managed. "She's perfect. She's ours." He looked down at his daughter. "I promise you'll never be afraid. Never be hurt. Never wonder if you're loved. I promise I'll be better than I was. Better than my father. Better than I thought I could be." Rosalie stopped crying, opened her eyes, looked at her father like she was making a promise right back. In the hallway, Sal, Luca, and Matteo waited with flowers and stuffed animals. 3 days later, Carol arrived with a box from the bakery. Inside was a cake shaped like a sleeping baby, pink frosting roses, named Rosalie in delicate script. Card, "Welcome to the world, little one. May you always know you are loved." Cassie cried when she saw it. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. 6 months ago, you showed me what strength looks like. Now I get to show Rosalie what it looks like when women lift each other up." Carol held the baby with careful reverence. Emma, 14 now and thriving, stood beside her. "She's so small," Emma whispered. "You were 2 once," Carol said. "And now look at you, honor roll, culinary school, becoming someone amazing." Dominic watched from the doorway. This gathering of survivors. This was the real victory. Not empire, not enemies vanquished. But this. Women who'd been broken, finding wholeness, finding each other. "Thank you," he said to Carol. For everything you've become, Rosalie would have loved you. Carol understood he meant his sister. I hope so, because I'm going to make sure this Rosalie grows up knowing there are people who will fight for her, just like you fought for us. From Denver, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside a card. Congratulations on your daughter. May she know only kindness. B. Cassie read it and smiled. Set it aside. Close that chapter one final time. That night in his Denver apartment, Brendan sat at his small table. In front of him, a letter he'd written 17 times. Dear Sarah, I don't know your real name. I only know you as Tommy Reeves's daughter. I want you to know your father didn't deserve what happened. He was a good man who made one mistake, and I threw him under the bus to save myself. He went to prison for 5 years while I walked free. When he got out and couldn't put his life back together, that was my fault too. I can't give you back your father. I can't undo the years you lost. I can't make it right. But I want you to know he mattered. His death mattered. I think about him every day, and I'm trying to become someone who deserves to carry that weight. I'm sorry isn't enough. It will never be enough, but it's all I have. I hope you're doing well. I hope you found a way to heal. With deepest regret, Brian West, Brendan Wolfe. He folded it carefully, put it in an envelope, addressed it to Sarah Reeves in Walla Walla, Washington, then put it in a drawer with the other 16 copies, unsent, because sending it would be selfish, would force her to deal with his guilt, but he kept them, all 17, as a reminder that his choices had consequences rippling beyond what he could see. Dr. Morrison had told him, healing isn't about being forgiven by people you hurt. It's about learning to live with what you've done and choosing to be different. So that's what he was doing, living with it, going to group, staying sober, helping other men understand that responsibility was the only path forward. It wasn't redemption, might never be, but it was a start. And for Brendan Wolfe, learning to accept he might never be forgiven was its own kind of growth. The weeks following Rosalie's birth blurred together. Doctor appointments, nursery preparations, Dominic learning to assemble furniture with patience testing instructions. Cassie's belly grew. Rosalie kicked with increasing frequency, especially at 2 a.m. She's already keeping us up, Cassie complained, though her smile betrayed how much she loved feeling life moving inside her. Dominic would press his hand to her stomach, feel his daughter move, wonder how something so small could reorganize his universe. He met with Sal weekly, slowly transferring knowledge and authority. Closed 2 operations that felt too risky, too violent. Focused on legitimate businesses, real estate things that would provide without requiring blood. FBI surveillance eventually ended. Agent Reeves moved on. Dominic Castellano, the Mafia boss, was being replaced by Dominic Castellano, the businessman. The transformation wasn't complete, might never be, but it was happening. And then everything changed. 6 months after Rosalie was born, on a December evening, smelling of pine and possibility, Cassie and Dominic stood in the cemetery on Portland's east side. Snow fell softly, dusting headstones. Rosalie slept in a carrier against Dominic's chest. They stood before 2 graves. Robert James Thorne, beloved father. Next to it, memorial stone. Rosalie Marie Romano, forever 16. Cassie placed white roses on her father's grave. Dominic placed them on his sister's memorial. I brought someone in to meet you, Cassie said. This is Rosalie, your granddaughter. I think you would have loved her. Dominic knelt, hand on his sister's name. I kept my promise, Bella. I protected them. All of them. And I'm going to make sure Rosalie grows up knowing she's safe, that she matters, that she's loved. He stood, snowflakes in his hair. I finally understand what you were trying to tell me. That night you died, when you said you just wanted to be warm. His voice cracked. You didn't just mean physically. You meant emotionally. You wanted to feel safe, loved, protected. He looked at Cassie, at their daughter. I couldn't give that to you, but I can give it to them, and to every person who comes to Rosalie's light. They stood in falling snow, a family built from broken pieces, honoring the dead by living fully. In Denver, Brendan celebrated 1 year of sobriety, stood in a church basement, accepted a chimp, told his story. In Portland, Carol's Bakery expanded to a second location, hired 3 women from Rosalie's light. The waterfront project opened to acclaim. Dominic's name on plaques, Vincent's too. Sal took over operations, ran them quietly, efficiently, lighter touch. The organization evolved. More business, less muscle. More protection, less punishment. And in Laurelhurst, Dominic Castellano learned to change diapers in warm bottles and function on 3 hours of sleep. Learned that true power wasn't making people fear you, but making one small person feel completely safe. He'd spent 20 years being the Raven, the man whose enemies disappeared. Now he was learning to be simply dad. It was harder than anything he'd ever done, more rewarding than he'd imagined. One night when Rosalie was 8 months old, Cassie found him in the nursery at 2 a.m. watching their daughter sleep. Can't sleep. Didn't want to, wanted to remember this. Remember what? How it feels to have everything I never thought I deserved. Cassie wrapped arms around him from behind. You deserve it. You've earned it by changing, by choosing to be better. I'm still afraid I'll mess it up. You will. Every parent does. But you'll fix it. You'll learn. You'll grow. They watched their daughter breathe, tiny chest rising and falling in gentle rhythm of innocence. Thank you, Dominic said. For what? For giving me a second chance. For believing I could be more. For loving me when I didn't love myself. Thank you for protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. For seeing my strength when I felt weak. For building this life with me. Rosalie stirred, made a small sound, settled. She's going to change the world, Cassie said. How do you know? Because she's already changed ours. They went back to bed, but not before Dominic stopped at the photo, his sister smiling and whole and 16 forever. Watch over her, he whispered. Help me be the father she deserves. And in the silence, he felt something like an answer. Not words, not signs, just quiet certainty that Rosalie, his sister, would have loved Rosalie, his daughter, with the same fierce protectiveness he felt every moment. That legacy of love passed down through tragedy and triumph was what mattered. Not empire, not enemies vanquished, not power wielded, but this, the ability to love without fear, to protect without violence, to build something that would outlast him. Outside Portland slept, the city that had witnessed his rise and redemption, his violence and peace, his past and future. And in a house in Laurelhurst, a family that shouldn't have existed but did, that had been built from broken pieces, but held together by choice, slept the sleep of the saved. Not perfect, not without scars, not guaranteed happiness forever, but alive, together, free. And that Dominic realized as he drifted off with his wife in his arms and his daughter down the hall was the greatest power of all. The power to choose love over revenge, peace over violence, tomorrow over yesterday, and in that choice to finally be free.